Guys, gals, everything in between. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. I'm going to post some video clips of Trump's latest COVID odyssey from the weekend and the latest from today. Before I show you the videos, I just want to read you a tweet that he sent out 3 hours ago. Especially look at the one I'm going to really boost up. I will be leaving the great Walter Reed Medical Center today at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Feeling really good. Ready for this? Check this out. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. Okay. We have developed under the Trump administration some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago. I'm going to play some clips, but before I play the clips, I just want to say one thing. I've received a lot of backlash from Trump supporters, probably bots, I don't know, whatever they may be. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. I am not even American, so there is no point telling me I am anti-Trump or pro-Trump or either. All right? I am not from the States. I don't care either way if he wins or loses. It has no effect on me or my life. I am just reporting and showing you what's out there. So if you want to leave nasty comments, feel free, but don't leave them towards me because I am just reporting what's out there, not my status of how I feel about them. All right? Enough chit-chatting. Let's get to the clips.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you. I want to begin by thanking all of the incredible medical professionals, the doctors, the nurses, everybody at Walter Reed Medical Center. I think it's the finest in the world for the incredible job they've been doing. I came here, wasn't feeling so well. I feel much better now. We're working hard to get me all the way back. I have to be back because we still have to make America great again. We've done an awfully good job of that, but we still have steps to go and we have to finish that job. And I'll be back. I think I'll be back soon. And I look forward to finishing up the campaign the way it was started and the way we've been doing and the kind of numbers that we've been doing. We've been so proud of it. But this was something that happened, and it's happened to millions of people all over the world, and I'm fighting for them, not just in the U.S. I'm fighting for them all over the world. We're going to beat this coronavirus, or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to beat it soundly. So many things have happened. If you look at the therapeutics, which I'm taking right now, some of them, and others are coming out soon that are looking like, frankly, they're miracles. If you want to know the truth, they're miracles. People criticize me when I say that, but we have things happening that look like they're miracles coming down from God. So I just want to tell you that I'm starting to feel good. You don't know over the next period of a few days. I guess that's the real test. So we'll be seeing what happens over those next couple of days. I just want to be so thankful for all of the support I've seen, whether it's on television or reading about it. I most of all appreciate what's been said by the American people, by almost a bipartisan consensus of American people. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I very much appreciate it, and I won't forget it. I promise you that. I also want to thank the leaders of the world for their condolences, and they know what we're going through. They know what, as your leader, what I have to go through. But I had no choice because I just didn't want to stay in the White House. I was given that alternative. Stay in the White House, lock yourself in, don't ever leave, don't even go to the Oval Office. Just stay upstairs and enjoy it. Don't see people, don't talk to people, and just be done with it. And I can't do that. I had to be out front, and this is America. This is the United States. This is the greatest country in the world. This is the most powerful country in the world. I can't be locked up in a room upstairs and totally safe and just say, hey, whatever happens, happens. I can't do that. We have to confront problems. As a leader, you have to confront problems. There's never been a great leader that would have done that. So that's where it is. I'm doing well. I want to thank everybody. Our First Lady is doing very well. Melania asked me to say something as to the respect that she has for our country, the love that she has for our country. And we're both doing well. Melania is really handling it very nicely. As you've probably read, she's slightly younger than me, just a little tiny bit. And therefore, just we know the disease, we know the situation with age versus younger people. And Melania is handling it statistically like it's supposed to be handled. And that makes me very happy, and it makes the country very happy. But I'm also doing well, and I think we're going to have a very good result. Again, over the next few days, we're going to probably know for sure. So I just want to thank everybody out there, everybody, all over the world, specifically the United States. The outpouring of love has been incredible. I will never forget. Thank you very much. We're getting great reports from the doctors. This is an incredible hospital, Walter Reed. The work they do is just absolutely amazing, and I want to thank them all, the nurses, the doctors, everybody here. I've also gotten to meet some of the soldiers and the first responders, and what a group. I also think we're going to pay a little surprise to some of the great patriots that we have out on the street, and they've been out there for a long time, and they've got Trump flags, and they love our country. So I'm not telling anybody but you, but I'm about to make a little surprise visit. So perhaps I'll get there before you get to see me. But I just, when I look at the enthusiasm, and we have enthusiasm like probably nobody's ever had. Our people that love the job we're doing, we have more enthusiasm than maybe anybody. So it's been a very interesting journey. I learned a lot about COVID. I learned it by really going to school. This is the real school. This isn't the let's read the book school. And I get it, and I understand it, and it's a very interesting thing, and I'm going to be letting you know about it. In the meantime, we love the USA, and we love what's happening. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I spoke to the president a little while back, and it sounded great. As the American people learned just a little while ago, President Trump is going home tonight. So we're headed to Utah for the vice presidential debate. Karen and I just wanted to express our profound gratitude first to the incredible medical staff at Walter Reed Hospital and at the White House for the care, the concern that they've shown for this president and our first family and all of those impacted the White House staff. And let me also take this opportunity to say how grateful we are for the expressions of concern and support and the prayers of millions of Americans who've remembered our president, remembered our wonderful First Lady. And we really believe it is emblematic of the love and the care and the compassion the American people have shown all of those that have been impacted by the coronavirus from the very beginning of this pandemic. But as I said, when the president told me he was headed back to the White House, he told me to head to Utah. And we're looking very much forward to the vice presidential debate. The stakes in this election have never been higher. The choice has never been clearer. And I look forward to the opportunity to take our case to the American people for 4 more years for President Donald Trump in the White House. So thank you all very much.
Mr. Vice President.
Think about this. Wouldn't it be an irony, the irony of all ironies, if on election eve it turned out Haitians delivered the coup de grace in this election?
We've been listening to President Trump's medical team at Walter Reed Medical Center giving an update, or something of an update, on his condition as the president continues to battle coronavirus. The president's physician there, Commander Sean Conley, was confirming that the president will, as the president announced on Twitter, be released from the hospital, though Conley said that President Trump is, quote, not entirely out of the woods yet, and will continue to receive, quote, world-class medical care 24/7. The medical team saying that President Trump has not had a fever in 72 hours, will receive another dose of remdesivir before being discharged. Dr. Conley notably continued to refuse to answer basic questions about the president's health, including about his lung scans when the president first tested negative, about what medications the president is on now, and on and on. CNN's chief medical correspondent joins me now. Sanjay, first of all, what I got from that press conference, such as it was that Commander Conley was willing to share information that he thought reflected well on the president's health, and refused to give any information that he thought would reflect poorly. He refused, when continually asked about when the president last tested negative, he said, "I don't want to go backwards," which is something that a press secretary says, not something a doctor says. When asked how the president would be safe at the White House, how would he be safely ensconced, quarantined, he said he couldn't go into that. He wouldn't go into the lung scans. He said he won't go into specifics about what he is and what he is not on. Are you confident that the president is safe to be discharged?
I don't think we have the information here about, as you're pointing out, Jake, the most basic things. Does the president have pneumonia? Don't know the answer to that. President needed oxygen. How significant was the impact on his lungs? Don't know the answer to that. We know that he's going to need to continue to get these medications, such as remdesivir and the steroids, at the White House, which is, again, the White House is a different sort of house. I get that. They have a White House medical unit there, but that's part of the reason he went to the hospital in the first place, was to be able to get these types of medications and being monitored while he was receiving them. Why the change here? When he was asked about, as you point out, Jake, if he's on blood thinners, because as you know, one of the things that can happen with this is people can develop blood clots, and that's why blood thinners could potentially be important. And he says, I'm not going to get into the patient's COVID-19 medications. Well, he has told us about the remdesivir and the monoclonal antibodies and the dexamethasone. So it just it makes you fully convinced that they are still not revealing everything here.
Yeah.
Why is that? I mean, because those are basic things. Someone asked a very good question about his cardiac function, cardiac, kidney, and liver function. And again, sort of a non-answer answer. I noticed, for example, the medication list that they gave, he was no longer receiving his statin medication. Was that because there was a concern about his liver? Because that can have an interaction with the liver? This level of detail is not just for giggles. It's really important in terms of determining what would happen next. Most important thing, Jake, which you mentioned at the beginning, it's not out of the woods. Yeah. Dr. Conley himself said before that days 7 through 10 is kind of the most critical days here, and we haven't gotten to that point. So why discharge him right as he's getting into this critical window?
Yeah, and I have to say, HIPAA regulations, which Commander Conley kept invoking, for those who don't know, that's health information privacy. It's why a reporter can't call a hospital to find out how the average citizen is doing. Doctors, nurses, and others are not allowed to give that information. I have never heard a president's physician invoke HIPAA regulations. I've never heard that. And also, I don't know if it's like the Fifth Amendment or not, but how is it that he can tell us some information about the president's health that reflects well on him, and that doesn't run afoul of HIPAA regulations, but stuff that might suggest that the president is actually not as healthy as the president and others want him to appear, that's covered by HIPAA regulations. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. It's very selective, and the things that they've left out, that they've invoked HIPAA for, are really critical details. I mean, again, this is a respiratory virus, and we still don't have a clear idea, after the president's been in the hospital over the weekend, what the shape of his lungs are in. We do know there's concern, given that he dropped his blood oxygenation and required oxygen. A lot of people may think, what's the big deal about that? It's actually fairly significant to have dropped your blood oxygenation at rest, needing supplemental oxygen. It shows that your lungs have been affected significantly by the virus. Not that they can't recover, but that they've been affected. There's 2 points, I think, Jake, that are going to be really critical. One, you already raised, the steroids. We talked about that before the press conference. I worry that that's a mask of what's going on here. I've prescribed a lot of steroids for patients in the world of neurosurgery. All doctors do prescribe these, but it's a mask. It reduces the inflammation. The inflammation is the body's response to the infection. Sometimes the inflammation can be too much. You want to reduce it to try and make the patient be able to recover. But at the same time, it's just a mask. The viral load is still there and still needs to be treated. As you wean the steroids, the viral load may start to increase again. And that's, again, why you want them in the hospital. And the other thing is, for hospitalized patients, Jake, long hauler sort of symptoms, these persistent symptoms of fatigue, of headache, shortness of breath, whatever they may be, about 90%, 87% of patients who are hospitalized for COVID do have some of these long hauler symptoms. So how are those going to be addressed? Have they had any evidence of that? What are they going to do about it? This just seems very short-sighted. I mean, again, if he were any other patient, leave alone that he's the president, you probably would have kept him in the hospital longer just to get him through this critical window and address those really important points.
There are other things Commander Conley said that I found a little odd. For instance, when asked about the fact that the president is taking these very serious medications and the course is not even done with them, and they are medications that you and I have been talking about for days. You need to be in the hospital to take them. They're so serious. And he said, we send patients home with medications all the time. Do they with medications this serious and this experimental? Is that true?
No. I mean, these are, I guarantee you they're not sending patients home all the time with these medications, because some of the, certainly not for COVID. Remdesivir is a relatively new medication. It's been around for a while, but for COVID, it's a new medication. And the idea of then combining it with antibodies, combining it with the steroids, that's almost a different situation into itself. We don't know what all the cross interactions are going to be. Again, as I was explaining before the press conference, remdesivir helps cut down on the viral activity. The steroids actually suppress your immune system to some extent. So now you have counteracting forces. He's getting both those medications at the same time. I'm not saying that plan is wrong, but the idea of doing it outside of a clinical setting, outside of the hospital, in something that is very little data on, we don't know the interaction with monoclonal antibodies, if any. I mean, this is new stuff. Do you really want to be sort of the president may now be on a regimen that very few, if any, people in the world have been on, over the last few days. That's why you want to observe this in the hospital to make sure it doesn't lead to problems. The steroids in particular, even though that's an existing medication we've known about, that can cloud people's judgment, that can make people aggressive, can cause all sorts of side effects, make them restless, make them hungry, unable to sleep. There's significant issues with those medications. It can also lull you into this confidence that I'm doing great. Because people often do feel, better on steroids, but that's not because they've taken care of the problem.
Right.
They've taken care of a symptom, which is the inflammation.
Sanjay, would Dr. Commander Conley said that President Trump is not taking fever reducers. Would the steroid be a fever reducer in any way?
Yeah, it could. The steroids can reduce fever, and I think he's also on an aspirin, I believe. At least it was in his medication list from before, which can also reduce fever. So I think he was referring to things like Tylenol, which is, it's good that he's not on medications that are designed to specifically reduce fever. But again, I think it's good information, but it's not complete, because we don't have the complete picture of still how high did his fever go. What did bring his fever down? How low did his oxygenations go? Was that in conjunction with the fever? Do we have evidence of just how significant the inflammation is in his body? I'm not asking questions. The questions I'm bringing up are ones that have easy answers.
Right.
And probably they know. Hopefully they know. I'm sure he got good care. But they're definitely not sharing. And once you get into this pattern of not sharing, it makes me question everything. You've got to question everything at that point.
Yeah, they've been hiding a lot of facts about this since last week.
So I wonder, Doctor, what your thoughts are on HIPAA rules applying to the President of the United States.
Well, it's a great question. And of course, it's a little bit of a gray area, given this is really unprecedented territory. I do find it strange from a medical perspective that they won't disclose the date of his last negative COVID test, or whether or not he plans to isolate, because it's clear the White House has become this COVID hotspot. And let's not forget, there's hundreds of employees at the White House who are essential workers. They work in facilities or on the grounds, the Secret Service who serve our country. They'll be in harm's way if the president doesn't take appropriate infection control measures like isolating. And additionally, I just have to say, for the president to tweet that COVID is not a big deal in the face of more new daily cases in the U.S. today than in the last 2 months, we're absolutely going the wrong direction here as we head into flu season. This virus has killed 209,000 Americans and required him to be hospitalized for 3 days. So for him to downplay this virus is a blatant lie that will only lead to more lives lost in this country.
CT scans and chest x-rays. What have you seen on his campaigning?
As far as travel goes, we'll see.
His mental status, can you talk to about whether he has any neurological symptoms? Does he have any side effects from his medications? Any fogginess from the virus?
No, I think you've seen the videos and now the tweets, and you'll see him shortly. You know, he's back. Yeah.
People who read the worst intentions in Trump are going to look at his tweet and when he's saying, don't fear COVID. He's going to, oh, look, he's playing it down again. He's dismissing the fears. No, what he's basically saying is you have to live your life. Yeah. We can't live under the thumb of this forever. And it really came home to me. I was watching this clip of a funeral in which the mourners were socially distanced. And the widow was by herself in the front row weeping for her dead husband. And her son is like 12 feet away, gets up, walks over to sit with his mother and hugs her and is holding her and comforting. And the funeral director comes over and says, no, separate. You have to separate. We cannot go down that road anymore. So there are untold people suffering from, I would say, the secondary, the tertiary consequences of this. And I think that's what he's trying to say. And as Americans and as the leader of Americans, it is important that you understand that there are benefits, but there are also risks. And I think that's the lesson. He is going to talk about this a lot. This is going to be the new Freebird in his rally. He's going to say, they said, sir, don't go outside. Sir, don't see the people outside. And I said, no, I'm going out there. And I went out there and I beat that virus like a drum. I beat it like a drum. So it's going to be another story arc in this unbelievable tale of the last 4 years. And this is what he is. He's a programmer. And this is an interesting plot twist for the last month, if you look at it that way.
We are following breaking news, waiting for President Trump to be released from Walter Reed Medical Center at his own urging this evening. Meanwhile, we have more breaking news. Brand new CNN polls on how the American public believes President Trump has handled his coronavirus diagnosis and how much the public trusts what we're hearing about his current health. CNN political director David Chalian joins me now. David, let's start with the president's handling of his own infection. What are the American people saying when asked if President Trump has been responsible?
Yeah, nearly 2/3 of Americans in this poll, Jake, say no. The president has acted irresponsibly, 63%, in terms of how he is handling the risk of infection to others that were around him and in contact with him. Only 1/3 of those polled say that he acted responsibly, Jake. How about the kind of information that Americans are getting out of the White House? Do they trust what they're hearing about the president's health? Only 12% in this poll, Jake, say they believe and trust almost all of the information they're getting from the White House about the president's health. But take those bottom two numbers, 68%, nearly 7 in 10 in this poll, only trust some or none of what they are hearing. Most of what they're hearing, they don't trust in terms of what the White House is saying about the president's health.
Well, those are bad numbers, although not unexpected given how the White House has handled this crisis. What do these new numbers tell us about how many Americans approve of how President Trump is handling the virus?
Yeah, these numbers for the president, Jake, are going in the wrong direction, precisely at the worst possible political moment for him, of course, being a month away from Election Day. 60% now disapprove of the way the president has handled the coronavirus outbreak. Only 37% approve. Look at that disapproval number over time, Jake. That 60% mark now, it's a high water mark of disapproval on the major issue in America today. You see it climbing April, May, June. You can see throughout. Now it's 60% disapproval on the issue that is defining his reelection effort.
And David, these polls also have some concerning new numbers about how many people say they will get a coronavirus vaccine should there be a safe and effective one.
Jake, this may be the most disheartening information in this poll. Look, overall, only 51% of Americans say yes. If there was a low-cost vaccine for coronavirus available now, they would take it. 45%, nearly half the country, say no, they wouldn't take it. Well, numbers like that, the vaccine doesn't work. And by the way, if you look at that 51% number being willing to take it, that's a negative trend also. Fewer and fewer people over time, if you go back and look, it was at 66% yes in May. 56% in August. It's now down to 51%, and we know that it is also being politicized. I mean, you could see inside these numbers, Jake, a difference that you see sort of between Biden supporters and Trump supporters. And Biden supporters are much more rapidly now stepping away from being willing, ready, and able to take a vaccine if it were available. I mean, it's just when you politicize something like this and you split the country on it, how possibly could a vaccine be effective at that point?
Well, I mean, he split the country on masks. Why not vaccines? David, stick around.
News over the weekend. This is like the president says. He's a wartime president. This is like when the general gets wounded by the invisible enemy, goes and gets patched up, and then gets right back to the front lines fighting this invisible enemy. I expect him to give a big speech to the nation. I think this speech should be humble and empathetic, and I think he should say and acknowledge that he was scared when he was diagnosed.
It doesn't sound like in his Twitter tweet today that is the...
I say I'm recommending him
okay.
saying
I got it.
Dana. Acknowledge that he was scared, but the fact that he kept his resolve to continue to fight for the forgotten men and women of this country. That, listen, everybody knows Washington goes crazy. He says what he means. He does what he says. That drives people nuts. But at least you know where you stand. And for him to be able to now use this as a pivot point to move in a different direction from coronavirus, go back to the populism that made him so popular and got him elected in 2016. Don't make it about himself. Make it about the people who he's fighting for, and that can be very effective. Do you remember what kind of broke the quarantine in the spring? What was it? It was when the George Floyd protests got everybody out of their house, and it kind of broke the fever. And people weren't as scared. They left the basement. They got out in the streets and they protested. This is a similar thing. This kind of breaks the fear factor. The president of the United States, surrounded by medical professionals, gets tested all the time. He's out there traveling and everything like that. He got sick. But you know what? He recovered. This puts things in perspective. And I'm not saying you don't fear the virus, but you don't live in fear. You're not going to be crippled by it. And hopefully that can be a good symbol for the rest of the country to reopen safely and strongly.
He's gone from outspoken Trump critic to a staunch Trump defender.
Thank you for being the best commander-in-chief.
And now Lindsey Graham is battling to keep his Senate seat in South Carolina and trying to convince voters he should be rewarded for his loyalty to the president.
Here's what I want to tell all the liberals talking about South Carolina. We're going to kick your ass.
Despite attacking Trump 5 years ago,
he's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot.
He now says this.
I think we're a team.
And Graham is betting that his vigorous defense of Trump's Supreme Court nominees and push to confirm his choice of Amy Coney Barrett by month's end will win over voters in this conservative state, despite what he said in the past.
I've been helping Trump, and I apparently pissed every liberal in the country off, but we'll be fine.
But Graham is being swamped by a deluge of attack ads painting him as a craven politician, suddenly making him among the most endangered Republicans. Democrat Jamie Harrison, a former congressional aide, state party chair, and lobbyist, is raising a staggering amount of money and bombarding the airwaves with ads like this one.
One of the reasons our political system is broken is politicians who've been in Washington so long.
Harrison has already spent $40 million in advertising, compared to roughly $14 million by Graham. Harrison has let his ads do the talking, doing little public campaigning and speaking sparingly to the media.
They have been blitzing us with ads back to back.
I've been seeing a lot of Jamie Harrison ads. I haven't seen much more than just that and on the internet.
As a father of 2 young sons and pre-diabetic, Harrison has been cautious in the age of coronavirus, even insisting on large plexiglass be placed beside him during Saturday's debate. Harrison's campaign says his schedule has been packed, but his aides would not provide a list of his virtual events, despite many requests by CNN.
Mr. Harrison? Hi, Manu Raju at CNN. Do you have a quick minute to talk before the debate?
Yeah, we've been trying to talk to you for this. Your campaign hasn't been responding to our questions. Mr. Harrison, do you have a quick second to talk about the debate, how it went? So any questions from CNN? Will you take them? At the debate, Harrison attacked Graham over his repeated promises in 2016 and 2018 not to advance a Supreme Court pick in a presidential election year.
You could use my words against me.
You took an oath to serve, and that's what you have done. Now, just be a man of it and stand up and say, you know what, I changed my mind.
Graham was unapologetic about his reversal.
Amy Barrett will be a buffer to liberalism.
If you want conservative judges, I'm your only bet in this race.
Yet it's that kind of shift that may cost Graham this voter in Myrtle Beach.
I kind of liked him until he flip-flopped on the Supreme Court thing. And that kind of turned me off.
But Graham thinks most voters will ultimately reward him in his quest to keep the court and the Senate conservative. You worry that voters may have lost trust in you?
No, not at all. I think people can trust me to be fair.
And Jake, in my interview with Lindsey Graham, I asked whether President Trump should have leveled with the American public and not downplay the coronavirus as he admitted to doing. Graham did not take issue at all with the president's handling of the virus and saying, I didn't think the president should, quote, go out and say, quote, the whole country is going to blow up.
Stick around. I want to bring in CNN's Nia Malika Henderson and Sungmin Kim, who's the White House reporter for The Washington Post. Nia Malika, let me start with you. Let's start with our breaking news. President Trump's pending release from Walter Reed Medical Center this evening. His doctors continue to refuse to answer basic questions about the president's health. They did admit that he's not entirely out of the woods yet. How much do you think it's politics driving the president going back to the White House as opposed to medicine?
I think it's 100% politics from this president wanting to appear strong, wanting to downplay this virus. We saw his tweets essentially saying to the American people, don't worry about COVID, don't let it run your life. Well, listen, this is an illness that caused him to be helivaced to a hospital and have to get all sorts of experimental treatments that obviously aren't available to average Americans. So I think this is a president that's always about optics. We saw him take that joyride of the sort of COVID parade yesterday, and so now he's doing the same. Perfectly timed, I think, for this president for the evening news to walk out of that hospital, be driven out of the hospital, however he goes out of this hospital. But listen, I think Americans know how this president has handled this virus so far. They don't approve of it, as David talked about, and I think his handling of his own virus and the virus as it spread throughout the White House only underscores the lack of faith and the lack of trust that Americans have in this president when it comes to this terrible, terrible illness.
And Sungmin, on that point, President Trump's poll numbers are moving in the exact wrong direction for him. And now you see him pushing to get out of the hospital when his doctors say he's not entirely out of the woods yet. One of the most perplexing things about covering this president is how often he moves to please the Breitbarts and Matt Gaetzes of the world, while the other 2/3 of the United States is looking at him and saying, we disapprove. And he, instead of trying to meet the people, the majority who disapprove of what he's doing, he runs completely in the wrong direction.
I think that's precisely right. Like, we've seen him do that with the handling of the coronavirus. You've seen that with his handling of the masks, when you know that a vast majority of the country believes and supports in mask wearing. But this is something that we've seen from the president time and time again. When there is something that is dominating his presidency, the news cycle, he tries to change the subject. He tries to veer it in a different direction that is more favorable to him. So if it was the pandemic going on earlier this year, he tries to pivot to the economic reopening and tries to kind of pressure states to kind of get things back to normal, because he knows that a sense of normalcy is something that would help his prospects in the election. You know, if there's a racial justice issues going on, he's trying to pivot it back to law and order issues. But this puts, again, the coronavirus pandemic squarely in the spotlight, as it should be, considering the severity of the current pandemic and how hard it is hitting the leader of the free world right now, just squarely back into the public spotlight, and in a way politically that the president and his team don't want.
David, I want to dive into the poll numbers here for a second. Talk about a warning sign for the Trump campaign. His disapproval rating for handling the virus has gone up. And take a look at that when it comes to women voters. Disapproval among women is up from 63% to 69%. This is already a group of voters that have been running away from him.
Yeah, I mean, we know the gender gap that exists in this race. There's no doubt about that. And his actions on his own contracting the virus, and how he handled it, and as you're saying, on just handling the outbreak overall, is driving female voters even further away. When I showed you before, 63% say he acted irresponsibly. If you look at the difference between how women and men answered that, it was like by 20 points. I think 72% of women are saying he acted irresponsibly in the way that he handled this. This is a particular problem there, and with independents, precisely the groups that if you're Donald Trump and you want to have a successful path to 270 and re-election, you need to start bringing some of these folks back into the fold. His actions in the last week, Jake, they continue to repel.
Yeah, and his action today is not going to help. Nia, there's also another group that President Trump needs, and this is shocking. Seniors. In these new polls, 62% of those above the age of 65 disapprove of how President Trump has handled the pandemic. It turns out that the message of let grandma and grandpa die isn't actually a winning one.
With grandma and grandpa, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, Democrats haven't tied or won seniors in decades, and you see Biden doing really well among seniors of all races. And I think you think about seniors of all races, you think about independents of all races, and women as well. This president is just not where he needs to be, and it's not clear how he gets there. How does he turn that message around, particularly in a state like Florida, Pennsylvania as well? Lots of seniors in those big battleground states, and so here he is with this message about COVID that affects seniors disproportionately, seniors like Donald Trump, and really not being able to have a message that assures those seniors that he is taking this seriously, this disease that has really ravaged so many different communities, nursing homes, people's grandparents, as you said. And so it's unclear that this new message of, listen, the president beat this, and too bad Joe Biden doesn't have this sort of firsthand knowledge of experiencing COVID. It's a ridiculous message, and I think you're going to see that show up time and time again with senior voters and in these poll numbers.
Right. The idea. That was one of the most ridiculous. You're referring to one of his spokesmen on that other channel saying that, now he's going to be a good president because now he has firsthand experience with COVID, which is just, brain melt. Thanks one and all. Appreciate it.